Imagine for a moment that the world you knew suddenly collapsed in front of your eyes, not slowly, not with warning, but in one violent moment that ripped every certainty out of your life, leaving you standing in shock, unable to understand how everything could disappear so fast. Picture yourself not as an adult with years of experience, but as a teenager, barely 17, someone full of pride, skill, and recognition, a warrior from one of the most respected clans in the land, carrying a legacy of honor that stretches beyond your lifetime. Now imagine that on a single October morning in the year 1600, on the bloody battlefield of Sekigahara, the most decisive military clash in Japanese history, you watch your world die. 80,000 men stand on your side, 80,000 on the enemy's, both forces determined to reshape the future of Japan. Within 6 hours, the earth is soaked in blood. Swords break on armor, screams fill the air, and as the dust settles, your army is obliterated. Your clan is finished, and everything you ever believed about your identity and future is reduced to ashes. Severed heads roll across the ground like discarded stones, and while others die with their honor intact, you survive, not triumphantly, but by escaping like a fugitive, knowing that your name, once respected on every battlefield, now carries the shame of someone who lived while his brothers died. This was the day Miyamoto Musashi, the man later hailed as the greatest samurai in Japanese history, hit the lowest point imaginable, a moment where many would have either taken their own life to escape disgrace or spent the rest of their days drowning in regret and hopelessness. But instead of doing what most would have done, Musashi made a decision that would change not only his fate, but eventually influence generations of warriors, philosophers, CEOs, athletes, and ordinary people facing battles of their own. He chose to rebuild himself from nothing. Wandering alone through forests and mountains, stripped of rank, family, and purpose, he forged within himself 5 mental principles that would turn him from a defeated teenager into a legend whose name has echoed for more than 4 centuries. These 5 principles were not mystical, romantic lines from a philosophy book, but battlefield-tested truths carved from pain, defeat, and the brutal honesty of facing life when it is at its worst. The first of these rules was simple, but incredibly hard. Accept reality without resistance. When disaster strikes, the human brain instinctively scrambles to deny, rationalize, or bargain its way out of the truth. We say things like, "This can't be happening. Why me? If only I had another chance," or "Maybe things will return to how they were." But Musashi cut through all of that. Instead of clinging to what he lost, he looked at the ruins of his life and told himself, "This is the situation, so what is the next move?" That single shift from "why did this happen" to "what do I do now" is life-changing. Because as long as you resist reality, you waste precious energy fighting the past instead of building your future. It is the same as standing inside a burning house complaining that the fire shouldn't be there instead of running to find an exit. Acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is strategic awareness. And even today, modern psychological studies from universities like Harvard show that people who recover fastest from trauma are not those who suffered least, but those who accepted the new circumstances the quickest. Acceptance frees the mind to think about solutions instead of drowning in pain. And as Musashi walked through the forests, starving, alone, and stripped of identity, he refused to play the victim, refused to indulge in denial, and refused to waste strength mourning the life he lost. His first decision was to face reality without excuses. But surviving was only the beginning, because accepting reality leads to a second challenge, one that destroys most people long before they rebuild: the seductive comfort of immediate relief. When life falls apart, when shame fills your chest, when anxiety, regret, or sadness burn inside, every instinct pushes you to escape, even temporarily, through distraction, alcohol, leisure, meaningless entertainment, food, sex, drugs, gambling, or anything that helps to quiet the pain for a few hours. In feudal Japan, samurai who lost their masters and became ronin usually drifted into this downward spiral. Many became drunk wanderers, some sold their skills for dishonorable work, others gambled their days away or drowned in what little comfort they could find. Musashi could easily have done the same. No one would blame him, most would have expected it. But he didn't. His second rule was brutal but transformative. Reject weak comforts and choose disciplined suffering. Musashi lived like a monk, sleeping outdoors under the sky, eating only enough to survive, training for 8 hours a day with the sword, studying philosophy, meditating, learning, writing, and forging himself into someone stronger than he had been before he lost everything. He understood something we now know scientifically. Running from pain makes the pain worse. Neuroscientists at Stanford found that when people try to escape trauma through comfort and distraction, cortisol, the stress hormone, actually increases over time because the brain recognizes that the problem isn't being solved. It's like trying to extinguish a fire with gasoline. Momentarily the flames flicker down, but soon they roar back with twice the strength. Those who replaced escapism with discipline, however, rewired their minds differently, not growing weaker under suffering, but stronger. Musashi understood the difference between random suffering and chosen suffering. One crushes you, the other builds you. If life is going to hurt, which it will, better to choose pain that transforms you rather than pain that destroys you. Every day, Musashi turned self-discipline into armor, and while others drowned their shame, he trained his mind and body into something iron-hard. But even discipline wasn't enough to rebuild himself. To rebuild himself, Musashi had to confront something far more dangerous than another swordsman: the instability of his own emotions. Years later, in the legendary duel against Sasaki Kojiro, a swordsman famous for his perfect technique and merciless skill, Musashi demonstrated the third rule that elevated him beyond ordinary warriors. Emotion is the enemy of judgment. Kojiro arrived at the beach early, sharpening his fury, preparing his sword, letting anxiety and anticipation twist his thoughts. Musashi, meanwhile, arrived 3 hours late, calm, breathing evenly, having spent the time carving a wooden sword from a broken oar. Kojiro fought with anger and pride. Musashi fought with clarity and patience. Their duel lasted only half a minute before Musashi cracked Kojiro's skull with the wooden weapon. That victory wasn't about strength, it was about emotional control. In our modern world, culture teaches us to follow your heart, trust your feelings, and express everything. But neuroscience contradicts this romantic idea. Studies tracking thousands of people have shown that more than 80% of the decisions we regret most were made during moments of intense emotion: rage, love, anxiety, sadness, jealousy, excitement, because emotions are biological alarms designed for survival, not for long-term planning. Think of emotions as passengers in an airplane. They can scream, panic, or complain, but they must never fly the plane. Musashi mastered the ability to feel emotions without letting them control his actions. One simple technique he used, which modern psychologists also recommend, was the 10-second rule. When hit by powerful emotion, wait 10 seconds before acting. Let the emotional wave pass, because emotions peak and then fall. And once the mind is steady, make decisions using reason, not impulse. How many people today destroy relationships through one angry message, lose opportunities out of fear, overspend from sadness, or ruin their progress through emotional decisions? Musashi refused to let emotion be the commander of his life. But even emotional control was not enough to complete his transformation. After the chaos of battle and years of wandering, Musashi began falling into a psychological trap that destroys millions today: obsessive self-focus. When life hurts, when trauma buries us in guilt, shame, and doubt, we often lock our attention inward, replaying the same painful memories, asking what if 1,000 times, drowning in mental loops that solve nothing. Musashi spent months reliving the Battle of Sekigahara, analyzing every strike, every decision, every moment he could have changed, and this rumination ate at him from the inside. That is when he realized the fourth rule: stop believing your life is the center of the universe. A mind that focuses only on its own suffering becomes a small prison. So Musashi forced himself to expand his world. He studied calligraphy, sculpture, painting, architecture, poetry, tactics, nature, philosophy, and every area of knowledge he could reach. He traveled,
met teachers in various arts, learned from different cultures, and discovered that while pain was still present, its power over him shrank because his perspective grew. From the mountaintop, the boulder blocking your path looks tiny, even though it hasn't changed in size, only your perspective has. And brain imaging studies today prove this effect. When individuals focus only on their pain, the same neural regions associated with depression light up. When the brain is stimulated with learning, creativity, and curiosity, new neural pathways form, and the pain circuits decrease in activity. In simple words, Musashi stopped being a prisoner of his own story by filling his mind with things bigger than himself. Through this expansion, he became unpredictable, wise, and capable of seeing solutions others could not. Knowledge became his weapon, his shield, and his path forward. And that is where part 1 leaves us, not with a man fully rebuilt, but with a warrior who has already discovered 3 life-changing truths. Accept reality without resistance. Reject comforting weakness in favor of disciplined growth. And control emotional impulses before they control you. These lessons, born on battlefields of the past, are still being validated in scientific labs today, and their relevance is not limited to samurai or war, but to anyone who has ever lost something, anyone climbing out of a personal disaster, and anyone determined not to stay broken, but to rise.
Many people spend their entire lives running away from failure, terrified of what it will do to their ego, their image, their confidence, and their sense of self. Yet failure is not the enemy they imagine. It is the silent mentor everyone meets sooner or later, the examiner that presents the most difficult questions before teaching the lessons. And in truth, success is simply the reward that comes to those who refuse to walk away when the world told them they should quit. And this is something we understand only once we experience real setbacks, the kind that shake us, break us, embarrass us in front of everyone, and make us question everything we thought we knew about our goals and dreams. Because society teaches us to celebrate the winners, but it rarely highlights the struggles, the sleepless nights, the tears, the doubt, and the pain that come before someone finally reaches the finish line. And so today, I want you to imagine a young woman named Arya, who dreamed of becoming a world-class architect, someone who would design breathtaking structures that would shape cities and inspire generations. Yet her journey was not the smooth, perfect story people like to hear. Instead, it was messy, chaotic, unpredictable, and filled with the kind of failures that would make most people walk away permanently. Because Arya was not born into privilege, she did not have the financial security, industry contacts, or polished academic background that others around her took for granted. And even though she studied hard, worked late, and committed herself fully, she kept facing setbacks from all directions, whether it was failed design submissions, rejected applications, internships that did not value her, or people who openly told her she would never be good enough to thrive in the competitive world she dreamed of entering. But what made Arya different was not that she was smarter or more talented. It was that she refused to accept failure as a permanent label. She understood that every no was not the end, but a redirection. Every mistake was not a curse, but an instruction manual. Every embarrassment was not humiliation, but a layer of emotional armor that strengthened her from the inside. And even though she was scared, hurt, exhausted, and often overwhelmed, she kept going. Because deep inside, she knew that regret would hurt far more than failure ever could. There were days when she sat alone staring at her unfinished sketches, questioning whether she was delusional for continuing when the world was throwing so many signs, pushing her to quit. There were evenings when she would walk past buildings designed by great architects and feel a sting in her heart, a voice whispering to her, "This may never be you." And yet she kept showing up, because she realized that success is not a result of luck, but of stubborn persistence, practical self-improvement, and emotional resilience. And slowly, gradually, failure began shaping her in ways success never could. She developed patience, attention to detail, humility to learn, emotional strength to endure, creative flexibility to adapt, and a mindset that said, even if I get knocked down 100 times, I will get up 101. At one point, Arya applied for a prestigious international architecture scholarship that only a small number of candidates received each year. And she poured her heart into the portfolio, her best work, greatest effort, deepest creativity, countless sleepless nights. And when the results came, the rejection hit her like a punch to the chest, and she broke down. Not because she felt entitled, but because she had given everything and still fallen short. And in that moment, she wanted to walk away, delete her files, throw away her pencils, erase the dream she held onto for years. But then she remembered something her mentor told her once. If you quit now, the pain will stay forever. If you keep going, the pain will eventually turn into victory. And somehow, that one sentence ignited her again. So instead of giving up, she rewrote her entire portfolio from scratch, studied award-winning designs, practiced new techniques, sought constructive criticism instead of emotional comfort, and applied again the next year. And this time, she still did not get in. And even though the second rejection hurt twice as much, something incredible happened. She realized that she was no longer scared of the rejection itself. She had grown bigger than the failure. And instead of breaking down again, she analyzed what went wrong, improved further, and focused even harder on becoming better, because she now understood that rejection is not a verdict on your potential. It is simply feedback on your present level. Years passed, and Arya continued to grind quietly, learning through real-world experience, building small freelance portfolios, designing small structures and interiors for clients who did not care about her reputation but appreciated the passion she put into every line she drew. And slowly, her work began getting noticed, first by small businesses, then by larger firms, and eventually by industry professionals who saw not just her talent, but the refinement that only years of struggle could shape. And one day, she was unexpectedly contacted by a major international firm that had seen one of her freelance designs published online. And they offered her a chance to present her ideas at a global design competition. And unlike her earlier years, Arya walked into that room not with fear, but with the mindset of someone who had faced every possible setback and survived. And she delivered with clarity, depth, originality, and emotional authenticity that made her stand out. And when the results were announced, she finally won, not because she was the most gifted in the room, but because she had spent years sharpening herself like a blade, polishing every flaw, transforming every setback into a new skill. And this recognition finally opened doors to the world she once dreamed of entering. And here's the deeper truth. If Arya had succeeded early, she might never have learned resilience, discipline, patience, expertise, or humility. Success would have been pleasant but shallow, short-lived, unprepared for the realities of the field. But because she failed repeatedly, she developed the traits that made her success sustainable. Many of us compare our Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20 and conclude that we are not good enough.
Yet every failure we experience is shaping us in ways we cannot see yet, building layers of character that will carry us through the challenges ahead. And the world may applaud the podium moment, but the real transformation happens in the private battles, the nights you stay up improving yourself, the mornings you wake up after disappointment and still move forward, the conversations you have with yourself when the world stops believing in you. Because success is not the applause you receive, but the person you become along the journey. And so the next time you fail at something, whether it's a business, exam, job application, relationship, creative project, or personal goal, remember Arya's story, because her journey proves that failure is not a wall, but a staircase. Every step may be painful, but each one takes you higher, closer, wiser, and more capable than before. And losing is temporary, but quitting is permanent. If you keep going long enough, eventually, the things that once terrified you will become the things you master. The opportunities that once ignored you will seek you out instead. And the dream that once seemed impossible will become your everyday reality. Because success does not belong to the lucky, it belongs to the relentless. And the only true failure in life is the decision to stop trying.
In the end, failure is not the opposite of success, but the foundation it stands on. The people who achieve great things are not those who never fall, but those who choose to rise every time they do. Every rejection, mistake, setback, and disappointment carries a lesson that shapes your skills, mindset, and character. And without these experiences, success would be fragile and short-lived. So the next time life challenges you, don't see it as a sign to give up. See it as proof that you are on the path to growth. Keep going, keep learning, and keep believing, because the only person who can stop you from succeeding is you.